Midnight. My alarm pinged once and the cameras lit up, and there they were, 3 men at my gate. Black polos, heavy boots, one holding a crowbar like he was about to crack it across steel. Behind them, tucked just far enough into the tree line to hide, I caught the reflection of a silver SUV I knew too well. That was Karen Delworth's car president of the High Oak View Estates, HOA. That night I learned my fence wasn't just keeping animals in, it was keeping predators out. And the fight for my land had only just begun. I didn't move out here to fight anybody. I'd served 20 years in the Army Corps of Engineers, built bridges across deserts and jungles, followed orders until my knees gave out. When I retired, I didn't want golf courses or neatly trimmed cul-de-sacs. I wanted dirt, rough, stubborn Texas dirt. I bought 97 acres from a rancher named Frank Dalton, patched up an old windmill, drove 3 miles of steel posts into the ground, and built a life the way I wanted it. My goats weren't a business. They were just company, and every morning their bleating mixed with strong coffee and a sunrise that reminded me why I left the city. Then the letters started. Cream-colored envelopes, all the same neat black print, dripping with the fake importance of some committee. The first one scolded me about visual integrity and non-standard fencing. Translation, they didn't like the look of my steel posts. The next one accused me of unregulated agricultural activity. That meant goats. Another letter claimed I was causing noise disturbances. Unless cicadas and an old windmill counted as rock concerts, that one was pure comedy. I tossed the first few into the fire pit, figured they'd give up, but by the 5th letter, I'd had enough. I scrawled 1 line across their envelope and mailed it back. I am not a member of your HOA. Cease correspondence. That should have been the end of it. But people like Karen Delworth don't take no for an answer. A week later, she showed up at my gate herself. White blouse, pastel pantsuit that didn't belong anywhere near Texas, dust clipboard hugged to her chest like it was the Constitution. She pressed the intercom, introduced herself in that clipped, rehearsed voice, Mr. Hicks, as president of the High Oak View Estates Homeowners Association. I believe we need to speak. I walked up slow, let her wait. Unless your truck's on fire or you're bleeding, ma'am, you don't have business on this land. She puffed herself up, talked about shared visual integrity, the smells of my animals, the appearance of my property. I told her flat, that smell, that's freedom. You don't like it? Plant roses on your side. Her tone softened then, almost coaxing. Wouldn't it be easier if you just joined? You'd have support security standards. I looked straight at the mic. I spent 20 years in uniform being part of something greater than myself. I bled for it. Out here I'm only part of goat manure and coffee at sunrise. Now get off my easement. She didn't argue, didn't shout, just snapped a photo of my gate and walked back to her SUV. That tiny click told me more than words. This wasn't over. Days later, a black Ford truck idled near my gate. 2 men leaning against the fender. Black polos, no logos. One grinned too much, introduced himself as Eddie, said his buddy was Cole. We're here on behalf of the HOA, he said, all syrup and smooth talk. I told him if he had something to say he could use the intercom. That wiped the grin a little. Then Cole stepped forward, shoulders squared, voice low. Join the HOA, keep your animals, nobody cares. But keep resisting. People start getting real curious about what's behind those fences. I asked him one question. Are you standing on my easement? He hesitated. I cut him off. 1 step more, and it's private property. You want friendly? You're on the wrong ranch. Tension stretched so thin you could have plucked it like a guitar string. Finally, Eddie muttered, "Come on, let's go." They drove off, slow tires crunching gravel like a warning. Then came midnight. Alarm pinged. Cameras lit up. Same Ford, same men. Plus another one, heavier limping. Eddie had the crowbar this time. Cole held the flashlight right into the lens. The third checked his phone like he was waiting for Karen's signal. And sure enough, there was that silver SUV, again crouched in the trees. I loaded 4 shells into my shotgun clack rack, a sound that echoed like a promise. I cut through the pasture low and quiet. Watched them slam that crowbar again and again against my gate, sparks flying. When they thought they had me beat, I tapped my phone. Floodlights burst across the yard white as noon. They froze. For a heartbeat, nobody breathed. Then they scrambled like scared dogs, Eddie tripping over Cole, the big one, limping harder as they half-dragged him back to the truck. I kicked the crowbar aside and stared straight into camera 2. "Hope you got that, Karen," I muttered, because I knew she was out there hiding in the dark, watching. That night, I didn't sleep. I spread every letter she'd sent across my kitchen table, stacked a fresh USB drive in the middle, every video, every plate number, every face. By dawn, the sheriff's deputies rolled up my road. Boots, hats, steady eyes. They bagged the crowbar, cast prints, watched the footage. They saw Karen's SUV, plain as day. But when I went down to the station later, she was there too. Karen, hair pulled so tight it looked painful lawyer in a slick charcoal suit beside her. She claimed her security detail had been conducting a perimeter sweep. Claimed I'd threatened them with a firearm. They slid a folder across the table, a so-called boundary agreement from 1997 that supposedly placed my land under HOA jurisdiction. For a moment, my gut dropped. The maps looked real. Seals, signatures, everything. I sat there wondering if I'd missed something when I bought the land. Wondering if maybe I'd been stubborn for nothing. I thought, hell, maybe she's right. Maybe I'm the problem. Then, training kicked in. I flipped to page 2. The seal format wasn't used until 2005. The topo map was satellite overlay tech that didn't exist in '97. I looked up at the deputies and said, "This is a forgery, and I can prove it." That was the turning point. Frank Dalton, the man I bought from, was still alive and willing to testify. And then came the whistleblower email, an anonymous packet of internal HOA documents. Plans labeled East Expansion Project. Notes about coercion. Invoices for the very men who'd swung a crowbar at my gate. Karen had orchestrated every bit of it. Rebecca Green, a Dallas lawyer. Tough as barbed wire took my case. She'd beaten oil companies before. When she looked over the evidence, she tapped Karen's signature on the forged map and said, "Let's burn them to the ground." The next HOA meeting was supposed to be routine. Instead, it blew wide open. Rebecca walked to the podium heels sharp and read Karen's email aloud. "Once Hicks is on board, we can fast-track the East Expansion Plan." Gasps filled the room. I held up the forged map, explained how the metadata proved it was created 6 weeks ago. Residents turned on her angry, betrayed. One board member stood voice shaking and moved to suspend Karen immediately. Hands shot up across the rows. The motion passed before Karen even sat down. But that was just round 1. Court was where the real fight happened. In Kaufman County Courthouse, I sat across from Karen and her expensive attorneys. Rebecca laid it out, trespassing, fraud, conspiracy. Karen's lawyers painted me as a paranoid veteran, unstable, dangerous. They said Karen was just a civic-minded woman protecting community values. Then the witnesses came. Deputies testified about the boot prints and the crowbar. Frank Dalton swore the land had never belonged to any HOA. And then Travis Beck, the limping thug himself, took the stand. He admitted it plain. We were hired cash under the table, told to scare him into joining the HOA. Miss Delworth assured us it was legal, said paperwork would cover us if cops showed up. Rebecca asked, "Who told you that directly?" Travis swallowed hard. "Karen, at the clubhouse, week before." He pointed straight at her. The jury shifted. The gallery murmured. The judge had to bang his gavel for order. And from that moment, Karen's mask cracked. Emails flashed on the projector, her own words mocking me as too stubborn, plotting to rope in my land with backdoor permits. Even a zoning official admitted she'd offered him a consulting gig if he redrew maps after the fact. Finally, it was my turn. I told the jury everything from the first cream-colored envelope to the sparks flying off my gate at midnight. I didn't dramatize it. Didn't need to. I just said I moved out here to be left alone. I followed every law, paid every tax, built everything with my own hands. And because one woman didn't like what she saw from her gated porch, she thought she could take it. I told her no. She didn't listen. Silence heavier than stone filled the room. Verdict day, the judge's voice was steady. Karen Delworth was guilty conspiracy to commit fraud, falsifying documents, attempted coercion. 4 years probation, $1 million in fines. Permanently banned from serving on any HOA board in the state. The association itself was ordered to pay me $720,000 for harassment, trespass, and defamation. Karen sat hollow-eyed, shoulders slumped. No pastel suit could hide the ruin. Her so-called empire collapsed in that instant. That was the moment I knew peace had a price, but I'd held the line. Lesson: bullies don't back down when you ignore them. They back down when you stand firm, armed with truth evidence and the will to fight for what's yours.